Ever been in a conversation where the moment you bring something up, the other person instantly shuts down or snaps back? You're not alone. Defensiveness in communication is one of the biggest blockers to healthy relationships, whether it's at home, at work, or with friends. But what if you could respond in a way that actually disarms that defensiveness and keeps the conversation open, honest, and respectful? That's exactly what we're unpacking today. Defensiveness isn't always about you. It's usually about fear. When someone becomes defensive during a conversation, it's a natural reaction rooted deep in self-protection. Most people don't wake up wanting to be difficult or confrontational. What we see on the surface, snapping, shutting down, denying, deflecting, is just a symptom. Underneath that surface, there's often fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood, or fear of losing control. It might be fear of being exposed or fear of not being good enough. And because they don't have the tools or space to handle that discomfort in a healthy way, it comes out as resistance. Recognizing that can change the entire trajectory of how you show up in a tense conversation. Because instead of taking their reaction personally, you learn to look past it. Many people hear something that triggers them, and immediately that inner alarm goes off. It's not even a conscious choice most of the time. It's automatic. That alarm sounds like, "I'm under attack," even when they aren't. It's based on a past experience, a wound, a memory, or even something from childhood. So when you're communicating with someone and they get defensive, what's often happening is their brain is saying, "This feels unsafe." Even if your tone is calm and your words are respectful, their history might be louder than your kindness. That's why defensiveness is less about what you said and more about what it feels like to them. Understanding this doesn't excuse poor behavior, but it does explain it and gives you a better lens to respond with awareness rather than frustration. When we take defensiveness at face value, we miss what's behind it. And when we miss what's behind it, we end up reacting instead of responding. That reaction just pours more fuel on the fire. You say something simple like, "Hey, I wish you'd told me about that sooner." And suddenly the other person says, "Well, I'm not perfect, okay?" Now you're both off track, arguing about the tone or the wording instead of staying focused on the real issue. What helps here is remembering that the defensive reaction isn't an invitation to fight back. It's a signal to slow down. If you're able to take that step back in your mind and remember, "This isn't about me," you give yourself emotional space to stay grounded and not absorb their energy. Sometimes people aren't defending themselves from you. They're defending themselves from the story they've created about what they think you're saying. Maybe you're offering feedback and they hear, "You're not good enough." Maybe you're setting a boundary and they hear, "You don't matter to me." This is why being clear and compassionate in your delivery is so important. But even with that clarity, some people will still get triggered, not because of what you did wrong, but because of what they haven't healed. And that is not your burden to carry, but it is your responsibility to navigate the conversation with emotional intelligence if you want any progress. Defensiveness is a barrier built in seconds, but made from years of experiences. And while you may not be the one who caused the bricks to stack up, you are standing in front of it trying to talk to the person behind it. If you lead with force, the wall gets higher. If you lead with patience and understanding, you might just see it soften. It's not about coddling anyone. It's about being wise with your words and grounded in your intention. Because once someone feels like they're being attacked, even if they're not, the logical part of their brain shuts down and the emotional part takes over. So your job isn't to win, it's to connect. And connection only happens when fear isn't driving the conversation. People don't show you their fear with trembling hands. They show it through frustration, sarcasm, interruption, or complete silence. That's fear dressed up in armor. That's why when you spot defensiveness, you're really looking at fear that doesn't know how to ask for safety. And instead of getting pulled into it, you have the opportunity to be the calm in that storm. You have the chance to remind them, not through lectures or corrections, but through your tone, pace, and presence, that they're not under attack. That reminder doesn't come in the form of words. It comes from the way you choose not to react. That's where real communication starts. Calm tone and body language can disarm a defensive response. The moment a conversation begins to feel tense, your voice and posture become the unspoken message. People listen to how you say something just as much as what you're saying. If your words are soft but your tone is sharp, they'll respond to the tone. If you're saying the right things but your arms are crossed, your face is tight, or you're leaning away, they pick up on that. Human beings are wired to read physical and vocal cues, especially when emotions are high. So when someone gets defensive, they're already looking for signs of threat. The more you look like a threat, even unintentionally, the more they'll shut down or push back. Most of us think we're being calm because we aren't yelling, but calm isn't the absence of volume, it's the presence of safety. You can be speaking quietly and still sound judgmental or irritated. Calm shows up in your breathing, your facial expression, your eyes, the tilt of your head. It's in the way you pause before replying, the way your voice holds steady when theirs goes sharp. You don't need to overpower them or dominate the moment. You're not trying to win a debate. You're trying to keep the door of communication open. And when someone is on edge, your emotional energy can either match theirs and escalate things or settle theirs by staying grounded and steady. Imagine two people standing on a bridge that's shaking. If both panic, the bridge collapses. But if one holds steady, there's a chance to calm the other. That's what your tone does. It holds steady. You speak slowly, clearly, with warmth, not as a performance, but as a choice. A calm tone doesn't mean you're being passive or giving in. It means you're choosing control over chaos. It's not about shrinking yourself to avoid conflict. It's about anchoring yourself so the conversation has a place to rest. That kind of calm is powerful, not weak. It takes a lot more strength to stay composed than to lash out. When someone gets defensive, they're not listening to logic. They're reacting to what their body feels. And your body language is speaking just as loudly as your words. If you're leaning forward aggressively, rolling your eyes, tapping your fingers, or sighing every few seconds, they feel judged. Even if you're saying all the right things, your energy is telling them something else. This is where intentional posture makes all the difference. Relax your shoulders, uncross your arms, nod slowly, keep your hands visible and still. These nonverbal signals are like an emotional green light that says, "You're safe here. I'm not your enemy." It's not just about calming them down. It's about not joining their storm. When their voice rises, yours stays steady. When they tense up, you soften your stance. You don't let their energy dictate yours. That's how you lead the emotional tone of the conversation. If both people go defensive, nothing gets solved. But if one person stays grounded, it makes room for both to breathe. You're not trying to force them to calm down. You're modeling it. And people often mirror what they see. So when your calm tone and open body language show up, it gives them something different to respond to. It's easy to get triggered when someone comes at you defensively. You feel disrespected, misunderstood, or blamed. But if your goal is to actually move the conversation forward, that goal has to be more important than your ego. Responding with calm is not about being fake. It's about being intentional. You're giving the conversation a fighting chance. You're showing that you're not there to battle. You're there to understand. That message doesn't come through just in your words. It's written all over your face, your hands, your posture, your breath. And that's what they're picking up, even when they can't name it. Lead with curiosity instead of correction. Most people listen just long enough to respond, not to understand. And when you're dealing with someone who's already defensive, coming in with correction, criticism, or even well-meaning advice feels like an attack to them. Their guard goes up, and the conversation turns into a battle of who's right instead of what's true. Curiosity shifts that energy. When you ask questions instead of making statements, you show them that you're not here to judge. You're here to understand. That tone of exploration instead of accusation softens resistance and invites honesty. It signals that you're not trying to win, you're trying to connect. And that subtle shift makes all the difference when emotions are high. People are more willing to open up when they feel like they're being heard, not handled. Curiosity says, "Help me understand what's going on with you," while correction says, "Here's what you need to fix." Even if you're completely right about the issue, correcting someone who's not ready to receive it is like throwing water on a grease fire. It only makes things worse. But when you stay curious, you take pressure off the moment. You create space for someone to step forward instead of feeling backed into a corner. That safety invites a more honest response, and with honesty comes real progress in the conversation. You're not pushing them, you're walking beside them through the conversation, and that's what builds trust. Asking the right kind of questions can gently guide someone from defensiveness to reflection. Instead of saying, "Why did you say it like that?" you could ask, "What made you feel that was the best way to say it?" That's a shift from blame to exploration. You're inviting them to think, not defend. You're showing them that their perspective matters enough to be explored, not shut down. It doesn't mean you agree with what they said or how they said it. It means you're giving the moment a chance to breathe. And when someone feels like they're being treated with respect, even in disagreement, their defenses naturally start to come down. When you correct someone, you're often trying to get them to see your point. But when you're curious, you're showing them that their point matters too. That balance makes a person feel seen and heard, even if you're still holding your own position. Curiosity doesn't mean you lose your voice. It means you use it differently. You ask instead of accuse. You explore instead of insist. You stay open instead of shutting things down. That openness is powerful because it keeps the conversation alive when correction would have ended it. It keeps the door open to mutual respect, even when the situation is tense or complicated. Most defensiveness is a reaction to feeling misunderstood, unseen, or judged. Curiosity is the antidote to that. It tells the other person, "I see there's more here, and I'm willing to look at it." It takes the heat out of the exchange and brings it back to human connection. You can still stand firm in your boundaries and beliefs while staying curious. You're not giving up your values. You're choosing a path that invites real communication. That path might feel slower, but it leads to stronger outcomes. It builds understanding, not just agreement. And understanding is what reduces conflict, not just pointing out faults. Curiosity also helps you stay grounded. Instead of reacting to their defensiveness with your own, it puts you in a mindset of learning. And when you're learning, you're not taking things as personally. You're more focused on what's happening beneath the surface than what's being said at face value. That mindset keeps you steady when the conversation gets rough. It helps you listen longer, speak wiser, and respond with intention. It gives you the control to steer the conversation instead of getting pulled into the emotional current. And more often than not, that steady curiosity opens a door that correction would have slammed shut. Validation does not mean agreement. It means understanding. So many conversations fall apart not because people disagree, but because they feel dismissed. When someone opens up or reacts emotionally and all they hear in return is correction or silence, it sends a signal that their experience doesn't matter. That moment builds distance. Validation is how you close that gap. It says, "I hear you, I see you, I get why you feel that way, even if you don't share their opinion." And here's what's powerful. When people feel understood, they stop needing to defend themselves. Their walls drop, and the conversation can finally get somewhere meaningful. You're not surrendering your viewpoint. You're showing that the other person's emotions are valid, even if the facts are debatable. People confuse validation with giving in. They think if they acknowledge someone's feelings, they're admitting fault. That's not the case. You can validate someone's emotional experience while still disagreeing with their conclusions. Saying, "That must have been frustrating," doesn't mean you caused the frustration or agree with their version of events. It simply means you recognize how it landed for them. That small moment of empathy is often enough to shift the tone of the whole conversation. It's a signal of respect, and respect is the one thing people crave the most when they're feeling defensive or misunderstood. Without respect, the conversation stays stuck in resistance. With it, you create a path forward. The truth is, People rarely remember every word you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. If they feel talked down to, dismissed, or invalidated, they'll hold on to that longer than any point you tried to make. But if they walk away feeling heard, even in disagreement, they're far more likely to reflect, to consider your perspective, and to engage with you differently in the future. Validation builds a bridge between your point of view and theirs. It tells them, I'm not trying to crush you, I'm trying to connect with you. And that shift in intention makes all the difference when tensions are high and emotions are running strong. In the heat of a defensive moment, you might feel tempted to push back, to prove a point, or to shut down the conversation altogether. But if your goal is to truly communicate and not just react, validation becomes your strongest tool. It gives the other person a moment to breathe, a chance to calm down, and a space to feel safe. When people feel safe, they stop fighting. Their nervous system relaxes. Their tone softens. Suddenly, what felt like a wall turns into a window. They begin to open up because they know they won't be judged or attacked for what they're feeling. That's the power of meeting someone where they are emotionally. Sometimes the hardest thing is to validate someone you strongly disagree with, but even then, you can find something real in their emotion. You might not agree with how they acted, but you can still acknowledge that they were hurt, scared, frustrated, or confused. And when you validate that feeling, you're not excusing the behavior, you're humanizing the moment, you're showing that you care more about connection than control. That approach doesn't weaken your message, it strengthens your ability to deliver it in a way that lands, because people stop listening when they feel blamed, but they lean in when they feel seen. Validation is the groundwork for change. It softens the defensiveness, clears the emotional fog, and creates room for reflection. You're not agreeing with every word or behavior. You're acknowledging the emotional reality that led to it. And when someone feels emotionally seen, they start seeing themselves more clearly too. That clarity doesn't come from force. It comes from feeling safe enough to be honest. That's the space where accountability grows. That's where real conversations happen, not surface level debates, but deep, meaningful exchanges where both people leave with more understanding than they started with. And that kind of connection starts the moment you choose to validate, not argue. Silence is sometimes your most powerful tool. In moments of tension or rising defensiveness, the instinct for most people is to fill the space with explanations, justifications, or rapid responses meant to fix, defend, or control the direction of the conversation. But sometimes the wisest thing you can do is say nothing. That doesn't mean disengaging or shutting down emotionally. It means using silence as a tool to regulate the temperature of the conversation. A well-timed pause can do what no perfect sentence can. It creates space for reflection, interrupts impulsive reactions, and gives both people in the conversation a chance to breathe. It's a signal that you're present without pushing, listening without rushing, steady without needing control. Silence allows the emotional dust to settle. When someone is defensive, they're often speaking from a place of heightened emotion, not clarity. If you jump in immediately with your response, you risk talking past them instead of with them. But when you stay quiet for just a few seconds longer, it sends a different message. It says you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, you're actually letting the moment unfold. That space can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to fast-paced conversations or if silence feels like weakness, but it's in that discomfort that real change can happen, because it forces both people to sit with what's real, not just what's reactive. In difficult conversations, silence breaks patterns. If someone expects you to fire back or get defensive too, and instead you pause and give space, it disrupts the cycle they're used to. They might say something sharp, expecting resistance, and instead they're met with calm stillness. That stillness can be disarming. It gives them a moment to hear their own words, to feel the weight of what they just said, to possibly even correct themselves. People hear themselves differently in silence. And sometimes the only way to help someone reflect is to stop giving them something to resist. You remove the battle they were preparing for, and in that space, something new becomes possible. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you're choosing when and how to say it. It means your response is coming from reflection, not reactivity. That kind of response carries weight. People feel the difference between words spoken to win and words spoken from wisdom. When you take your time before you speak, it teaches others that not every moment needs to be filled, that presence doesn't require noise. It shifts the pace of the conversation in a way that invites maturity and thoughtfulness. In a world of constant noise and instant reactions, silence becomes the rare signal of emotional intelligence. Sometimes people need to let their emotions play out before they're ready to hear you. And if you interrupt that emotional release with your own need to clarify, defend, or correct, you short circuit their process. But if you give them space, not just physical, but emotional, you allow them to come down on their own. That's a sign of respect, not indifference. You're saying, I'm here, I'm listening, and I don't need to overpower this moment. Silence doesn't just de-escalate, it dignifies. It says, you're safe to feel what you're feeling, and I don't have to fix it to sit with it. That presence alone can do more to calm a defensive person than any perfect phrase ever could. Silence also gives you clarity. It gives you time to check in with yourself before you react. You ask yourself what's really happening, what really matters, and what kind of energy you want to bring. That space between their words and your response is where you regain control over your own reactions. You get to choose how you show up. And when you respond from that grounded place, your words hit different. They land with intention, not just emotion. Silence buys you that space, that clarity, that calm. It's not absence. It's strategy. It's the choice to protect the quality of the conversation, even when everything in you wants to jump in.